All right, ladies and gentlemen, as you can tell, the format of this video is a little bit different, and I did this for a reason. I wanted to kind of make more of a interactive, an interactive graph here, kind of showing you how as the market price changes, how everything else kind of changes as well. So what I'm going to be doing here is we have this graph. And we see that here's our market price. This orange line is our market price or our marginal revenue, because we know that they're equal in perfect competition. We have our marginal cost curve, this green line right here. We have our average total cost curve. And then we have our average fixed cost and then our average variable cost curve. And I'm going to focus in a little bit more on the break even and the shutdown points in this particular regard. So we know that marginal revenue needs to equal marginal cost. So right now our market price right here is at 45, and that's where our line is at. And we have this output right around a little over 11 units. What if the marginal price increases? Let's say that it increases to $75. And you can see that this marginal revenue curve jumps up. And if we go back and then forward, we're seeing that market price jumps up, but also what's jumping up is the level of output. That's increasing as well. And if we go down here, we know that level of output is increasing, and I went ahead and just added output over here, but we know that marginal revenue needs to equal marginal cost. So somewhere in between these two, somewhere between 11.6 and 12 units, we have where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, which is showing us what we're looking, somewhere between 11 and 12 units. What if price falls now to say $30? We see that market price falls. But if you notice that market price, we're still going to be operating or producing where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. And we can look right through there and we see at this particular point that the average revenue is actually higher, or this marginal revenue is actually higher than the marginal cost at that point. So we're still obtaining a little bit of a profit. So even though the price has fallen, that at that production point, at that level of output, marginal revenue is still greater than marginal cost, which means we have a profit of about $28 in this particular instance. So what if price falls a little bit more? And I'm actually going to type in a number that I found to be the break even. So if it was at $27 and a little over 8 cents, so 8.3 cents, we see that our profit is actually at zero. Well, if you look at this point, at our break-even aspect where profit is zero, we actually see that marginal revenue, this orange line, intersects that marginal cost curve at the same point where it's intersecting the average total cost curve. So if you remember, our break-even point is where average total cost equals that marginal cost curve, because we're just reducing our marginal revenue to that same point. So what if prices fall to say $25? Well, now we're operating at this point right here, but that's below the average total cost curve. And matter of fact, let me add a little more separation. So I'm going to drop it down to $20. So we're operating now at this point right here, but our total cost is actually going to be straight up. Our total cost is going to be at this particular point. So our total cost is right here, but we're only earning this much. So we're going to be facing a profit of negative $78 or $68. So we're actually facing a loss. So we're at a loss now, but do we shut down? Well, we're not going to shut down because we're still covering some of our variable costs, or we're covering all of our variable costs and some of our fixed costs. And let's actually look at that on this table down here. So we have where marginal revenue equals marginal cost right here. Our average total cost is this negative, is this $27.08. Our average variable cost is $16.67. So here's what's going on. We receive $20 in profit. So our profit is $20. Our average variable cost in this particular instance is at 16.67. So we're able to cover all of our variable cost. And what's remaining? the amount that's remaining is going to be roughly $3.33. So we have $30.33 left over. Well, what's our average fixed cost in this particular instance? Well, our average fixed cost is $10.42. So our average fixed cost is $10.42. So we are actually going to be using this amount right here, this remaining $3.33, to try and pay off part of our fixed cost. So instead, at this particular point, if we were to shut down altogether, our fixed costs would still remain the same. We would still be paying $100 in fixed costs. But by continuing to produce at that particular output, our average fixed cost, our total loss is $7 rather than, or $7 per unit, rather than, what potentially could have been $10.42 a unit. So it doesn't truly make sense to just shut down whenever we're in between the shutdown and the break-even point, because we can use that remaining amount, we can use that leftover amount to still try and cover some of our fixed costs. So let's look at it from the total standpoint. So we're going to actually be producing at an output of 9.6 in this particular instance. So we come right here, we have an output of 9.6. We have a total variable cost, or we have a total revenue of $192, and we're going to take that total revenue, we're going to pay off all of our variable costs, which is $160. So we're going to have $32 left over. That $32 then goes to pay off part of our fixed costs, leaving only $68 remaining. But if we were to shut down right then and there, our fixed costs would still remain the same at $100. And we're not covering any of those fixed costs. So we're going to continue to operate in the short run to still cover some of those fixed costs. Now, what if prices drop down? And what if they drop down to the shutdown point? And the shutdown point in this particular instance is actually $16.05. At the shutdown point, they are not going to be producing anything anymore. And at the shutdown point, the average variable costs are actually equal to the marginal revenue, or that marginal cost. So that at the market price, we actually see right here that this average revenue curve, this orange curve, is equal to the marginal cost curve, and is equal to the it's going to be equal to the average revenue, the average variable, and the marginal cost curve. All three of those points intersect, and this is going to be our shutdown point right here. Well, if we look over here, our profit is negative 100, which is exactly equal to our total fixed costs. Well, why is that? Well, it's because we're receiving we're basically receiving $16.05, and our average variable cost $16.05. We're spending all of our money trying to just pay off all of our variable costs, and we're still having to incur a loss of all of our fixed costs. So what happens if market price drops a little bit more? What if it drops to $15? Well, now, if we continue to operate at a market price of $15, we would be losing $108. And at $8.50 over and above that 100, that's a variable cost. We're losing that much in variable cost. Whereas if we shut down, that $8.50 goes to zero, to where we only lose $100. So we're never going to operate below the shutdown point, because if we're operating below the shutdown point, we're incurring a loss on not only our fixed costs, but our variable costs as well. And it makes no sense, because we can just shut down and have a zero variable cost, zero total variable cost. So anytime that the market price falls below the shutdown point, we're going to shut down, stop producing, and we're minimizing our losses at that time and only paying our fixed costs. If it's between the shutdown point and the break-even point, we're going to operate in the short run at a loss to cover some of our fixed costs. And if the prices are above the average total cost, where the average total cost intersects with the marginal cost, we're making money, we're making a profit.